I call to order and welcome you to the Middletown, Ohio regular City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. Please join me for a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. You will hear 3 taps of the gavel when it is time to stand. Please join me in a moment of meditation now.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk of Council, Mrs. Amy Skank, please call the attendance roll.
Mr. Lawley.
Here.
Mrs. Carter. Present. Mr. West.
Here.
Mr. Horn.
Here.
Mayor Slamka.
Here. The next order of business is citizen comments. A professional presentation is expected. This is not the time for debate, questions and answer, or any back and forth conversation. This is a time for you, our residents, to be able to present to council on record, uninterrupted, and have the floor. This evening we have four comment cards. I will prompt each speaker for their next steps when they reach the podium. I would like to call Otis Trammell to the podium. Please adjust the microphone so that you can speak directly into the microphone. And first, please state your full name and Middletown residence, work address, or interest in the city for the record.
My name's Otis Trammell. I live at 622 Cleveland.
Okay, thank you. And you will have 4 minutes of uninterrupted speech as soon as the timer is set. And you may begin.
Okay, thank you. So we have an organization called The Blueprint. We run a community project over in the Sherman Park area. We've run a community garden over there, and we are looking to get some funding to maybe put up a greenhouse and do some other projects so we can make ourselves self-sustaining. The goal is to really put this neighborhood project in a position where we don't have to continuously go for funding and look for handouts to be able to keep it functioning. So that's really it. It's short and sweet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trammell.
Thank you.
I would next like to call Melinda Stidham to the podium, and I'll prompt you when you get to the podium. Please adjust the microphone so you can speak directly into it.
Good
and
evening.
First, please state your full name and Middletown residence, work address, or interest in the city for the record.
I'm Melinda Stidham. I live at 622 Cleveland Street. I am a part of the Blueprint Community Garden and Middletown Connect Community Ambassadors.
Okay, one moment. And you will have 4 minutes of uninterrupted speech, but we do need to reset the clock. Just a moment, Melinda. Okay, please commence.
I just want to say how proud I am of Middletown. I moved here a few years ago. In the neighborhood I live in, you see kids everywhere, but not at our parks. When you guys did the renovation for the Sherman Park neighborhood, I am baffled at all the children and their families out there playing in the green space, out on the new equipment. I know everybody is talking about Goldman Park getting done, which is really exciting. I can't wait for that one done, and same thing with Oakland Park. So I just came here to tell you guys are doing a great job. It might not seem it to most outsiders and everything, but the residents that actually live here really enjoy being able to come outside and have places to go and hang out with our families and don't have to worry about just sitting there on the same equipment or getting hurt and all the violence. And you guys are making it a really enjoyable place to live, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Stidham. Next, I would like to call Jack Hemmening to the podium. Oh, thank you. Please go ahead and please adjust the mic so you can speak directly into it. And then please state your full name and Middletown residence work address or interest in the city for the record.
Thank you. My name is Jack Hemingway, and I am an attorney. I represent Middletown City Schools.
And you will have 4 minutes as soon as there you go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members of City Council, my name is Jack Hemingway. I represent Middletown City School District. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight regarding the city's Planning Commission. The city's Development Code establishes the Planning Commission, which is made up of 7 voting members. And for as far as I could look back, decades I believe, the city code has provided that 1 of the 7 voting members on Planning Commission is approved by Middletown City Schools. The school district greatly values this opportunity to have a seat at the table to decide how the city is developed, and this shows the long-standing collaborative relationship between the city and the school board. As you know, the development of the city, whether it is increasing density in a residential area or bringing in a new business development, has a huge impact on how our community grows and changes. These changes also have a significant impact on the school district, particularly when they increase the student population. Given the impact that development has on the school district, it is vitally important to the school district to maintain its longstanding ability to appoint a member to the Planning Commission. The school board has very much appreciated the city's interest in ensuring that the voice of the community, including the school community, is heard in matters related to development within the city. Middletown City Schools has always considered itself a partner to the city in development. For this reason, the district has pre-approved TIFs and CRAs for years, eliminating a potential hurdle to development and streamlining the tax abatement process for development projects. With the school district's approval, TIF agreements the city can negotiate with developers are substantially longer, 30 years instead of just 10, and can exempt the full increased value of the property instead of being capped at 75%. Without the school district's approval, these TIF agreements would be much shorter and less valuable for developers. In the past, the school district has pre-approved these abatements because the district recognizes the benefits of economic growth to the area, and importantly, because the district knows it has a voice in how the community is developed. Middletown City Schools is committed to continuing its partnership with the city. The school district considers its ability to appoint a single member to the Planning Commission as an integral part of that partnership. On behalf of the school board, we request that this council reconsider any amendment to the Planning Commission code that would remove the school district's ability to appoint a sole member. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And the final comment, I would like to invite Lamar Farrell to the podium. And please do adjust the microphone so you can speak directly into it. And please state your full name and Middletown residence, work address, or interest in the city for the record.
Lamar Farrell, 5002 Manchester Road.
And as soon as the time is reset, we'll have 4 minutes. Please begin.
Well, I want to say to you that I have not had the personal privilege to. Congratulations on your appointment to our city council. Some of you I've gotten to congratulate personally. Today, again, I got to congratulate some of the newly promoted lieutenants in our police department, and we celebrate that. Tonight, I stand before you, and because I only have 3 minutes and 28 seconds, I cannot pause for very long, but I want to pause to hear some silence. It's awkward. And I wonder why the silence has come. We celebrate advancement with musicians in our city, entrepreneurs, medical achievement, sports stars, and others. But we just have witnessed the election, and no matter what side of the political party you sit on, the reality is we've heard crickets from the city. J.D. Vance is a Middletonian, and whether you understand or not, Scripture tells us to honor those who deserve honor. Now, before we debate and dialogue on what hillbilly elegy has meant, the reality is that J.D. has shown us all that we can climb from a place that all of us would want to climb from. Is this silence because of jealousy from the city? I've seen it. Prejudice from the city? I've seen it. Fear from the city? I've seen it. We could go on, but I say this. After living here for 28 years, I live in this city, and I'm proud to live in this city. And for us to put a blanket on what just happened for Middletown and what just happened in the achievement of J.D. Vance, who will hold the second highest position in our nation without a word? Come on, Middletown. We're better than this. You know, people talk and walls talk. And the reality is this: we have an opportunity to celebrate something that we've remained silent on. I'm not here to talk about a political party. I'm here to say this: every accomplishment in this city we should applaud, whether we understand or agree with positions, because guaranteed today, none of us would ever agree with everyone's full policy. J.D. Vance is a Middletonian, proud to be a Middletonian, and I ask, as the water runs, what have we done about it? What have we said about it? How are we celebrating? The final thing I'll say is this: Madam Mayor and members of council, I believe that as a city of Middletown, we can do everything to see that his appointment to serve the people of these United States that we just celebrated and saluted the flag with, it would behoove us to ask, you know what, JD, you're from Middletown. You can probably do some things to help Middletown. Whether a Democrat would be elected or a Republican, I would wish that we would stop the nonsense of silence. And I believe that we have something to celebrate. Let's celebrate well. Let's applaud often. Let's get our heads out of the sand. Let's not be foolish.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public participation. The next agenda item is council comments, and we will begin to my left with Councilmember Lawley, followed by Councilmember Carter, and then to my right with Councilmember West, followed by Councilmember Horn. Mr. Lawley, and I will speak last. Mr. Lawley?
Thank you, Mayor. My shout out tonight to those who work hard to make Middletown better goes to the citizens of Middletown, especially for their voter turnout in the election, regardless of if your candidate won or if your issue won. The cool thing is my colleagues here for a month before implored Middletonians to get out and vote, and they did, which is a great thing. You know, like I said, regardless of which way you voted, 61% of Middletonians voted. That's higher than it's been in a long, long time. Middletonians casted 17,000 votes. So that's a good thing, and I hope it continues in the city. I hope people stay involved. So my shout out is to the citizens of Middletown. And if you're at the State of the City address, the Hill family did something really cool. They awarded the Sunny Hill Humanitarian Award to the community, to the citizens of Middletown. And so that further speaks that, you know, the people of this town are getting involved and coming back. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Lawley. Mrs. Carter?
I would like to congratulate Middletown myself, but I also would like to give a piece of inspiration for the community. And I get this inspiration from my pastor of United Missionary Baptist Church. And he says to me, what you ignore becomes more. What you tolerate will soon take over. What you challenge will change. And I'm hoping that Middletown will grasp this and run with it. I'm through.
Thank you, Mrs. Carter. Mr. West?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I think Pastor Lamar, you might have seen my notes for tonight. That was going to kind of be my message is, you know, recently, whenever I travel, people always ask, you know, where do you live? And I say Middletown, and the conversation quickly ends when I say it's in the middle between Cincinnati and Dayton. A couple weeks ago, I traveled down to Tennessee for a wedding, and folks asked, where do you live? And I didn't even say Middletown. I would start the conversation with where J.D. Vance is from, and immediately it brought on conversation with people. What's Middletown like? We've heard this, we've heard that. What is Middletown like? Do you enjoy it? They know I'm raising a family here. And so whether you're Democratic, Republican, or even an independent, I think one thing that we should do is celebrate that somebody that drinks the same water that we do can become the second most powerful leader in this country. When JD came to town, I went to that event. I went to his speech. But I would do the same if it were a Democrat. And I like what Pastor Farrell said, that, I think in this town we don't celebrate enough. We don't celebrate the small wins, let alone the large wins. So I would like to thank Middletown City Schools for congratulating JD publicly. I was a little bit saddened that the city didn't, and I would like to see that in the future we can celebrate all of Middletown's wins, not if it fits a certain agenda or a certain position. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. West. Mr. Horn.
When I went to vote, it was nice just to see people coming in, coming out. There was a line, and everyone was calm. Everyone was just doing what they were supposed to be doing, which is your right. You are one vote. You're one person. And that was very nice. It was down at Miami University, where I always go. And it's just nice to know, even I appreciate the statistics there, Councilman Lawley. It just shows that we can show that we have a voice that needs to be heard, no matter what. A few things that I want to talk about. I attended the Sherman Park ribbon cutting. And it's kind of nice sometimes when you have that rarity. 45 years ago, I was going to that school that was there, at Sherman School. And maybe it's a Gen X thing that we feel a little tougher, but we walked from Sherman School to Roosevelt School, parade style. And for those who want to check, I like when we got to fact check anything said. If you can you can find the paper back then. I'm the kid with hair, haven't gone over it, that's holding the banner. It's just to show that, that's how we did things back then. But it was a comfort to see that instead of that just being a grassland that we have to cut and mow down, or a prairie, it turned into something even better. It turned into a place where families can gather, and we invested in that. I also had a young man who recently joined one of our boards, volunteered for one of our boards, and his passion is parks and also gardening. So, and he was telling me about this, telling me what we could do even with the park that we just opened. He had some great ideas. I said, well, because I'm from that neighborhood. I said, you got a few minutes? And he said, sure. So we walked over to the corner of Cleveland and Grand, and that's where our community park, our community garden is. And I agree with a lot of the small green spaces that maybe a house would not work under the current building codes, that we need to start thinking about that to get children involved. I really think it's a travesty, and this is me talking last century, and this is not any reflection of the school system. It just happened. I was of the school age, school time when we had industrial arts, where you learned how to sew and cook and metal shop and wood shop, and they also had us do drafting, I guess, so we could learn how to read a tape measure. Unfortunately, we don't do that as much. So when we can get kids and families together they were actually having a workshop on Saturday to do such things, I think that's something that we need to consider along with the parks. And with the community garden, and with those folks, and I do appreciate you coming, I want to continue to implore our citizens to come here and give your 4 minutes for whatever reason. It might be legal, it might be a need, it might be just thanking us, it might be you don't like something I did, I'm okay. So, but just do it, because I had no idea that our community garden needs a greenhouse. Now we know, but we don't know if we don't know. So I would just continue to ask that the citizens continue to do that. Also, we're in the month of November already, and I'd like to continue to also ask citizens to volunteer for our boards, because we need to get that hopper full with applications, because now we're actually going to do a little bit more by having staff vet them just to make sure that what they said on the application is accurate. And then we have a conversation, and we want to make sure we're putting people on our boards, citizens that we appoint on our boards. So again, I want to thank the city of Middletown. It just shows that, we have when you come into town, you see some people's names on things that were famous that they did. And I'm sure we'll have more things to show more famous people that come here. So when people say things like, well, that's Middletown, well, yes, we are Middletown, but we also have some people who have excelled and have taken themselves from, I lived in the Sherman area when I was growing up. You can apply yourself, go through a public school system, and apply yourself even past that. And you can do great things, but you have to apply yourself. You just can't expect someone to hand it to you or have entitlements get you where you want to be in your life. To you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. I have some comments this evening as well, and mostly city updates. So, did you know that animal chiropractic is a service that you can find for your animals? Did you know that there are fewer than 5,000 animal chiropractors in the world? And did you know that Middletown boasts one of them? Not only that, he is also an award-winning chiropractor for both animals and humans. We have many business gems in Middletown, and one of them is Dr. Mark McClure. He has been working with humans for nearly 40 years and with animals for 17, and was named as a 2021 America's Best Physician for General Chiropractics and awarded this year for Animal Chiropractics. He was also specially selected to be authorized to treat veterans, an honor only 20 doctors out of 79,000 in the U.S. have. Dr. McClure works with all kinds of animals from the zoo and farms and all kinds of pets, large and small, even koi fish. To find out more about Dr. McClure, please visit his website at drmcclure.com. Middletown's first ever Bowl Week continues through this Friday, November 23rd. Enjoy $10 deals on soups, stews, and chilies at 12 participating local restaurants. For more information, please check the Middletown, Ohio events on Facebook or visit our city website under Residents and then City of Middletown events. Rise Up Performing Arts presentation of Disney's Frozen Jr. will be at the Swarg Opera House in downtown Middletown from this Thursday, November 21st through Sunday, November 24th. Tickets are on sale now, and for more information, please visit swargoperahouse.org. Primo Italian Steakhouse, located at 6 South Broad Street, is offering Thanksgiving dinner from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Thursday, November 28th, Thanksgiving Day. No muss, no fuss. Enjoy their special 3-course holiday dinner for just $45 a person and a kid's plate for just $18. To make reservations, please visit primeprimo.com under events. Our Middletown holiday festivities, collectively called Very Merry Middletown, have begun. Holiday Hoopla's ice rink is open, and Very Merry Middletown continues with the incredible drive-through fantasy light display of Light Up Middletown, celebrating 25 years. Light Up Middletown begins Thursday, November 28th, Thanksgiving Day, and runs through New Year's Eve, December 31st. Please come out to Smith Park from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. to see the kickoff of the lights. To find out more, like when the balloon glow will take place, please visit lightupmiddletown.org. Very Merry Middletown also continues with an array of festivities next weekend, including Small Business Saturday on November 30th in our wonderful shops and restaurants downtown and all over the city. Come out and support our local business while ensuring your tax dollars stay in Middletown. Later that day, enjoy the Santa Parade starting at 5:30 p.m. To find out more about all the Very Merry Middletown festivities, like photos with Santa and Mrs. Claus, horse-drawn carriage rides, and more, please look up Very Merry Middletown connected to the cityofmiddletown.org site. The Pendleton Art Center, also known as the PAC, located at 1105 Central Avenue in downtown Middletown, will be open next Saturday, November 30th from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Shop the wonder of 2 floors of art and handcrafted gifts, perfect for all those on your nice list this year. Also on Saturday, November 30th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., Artists at Work are hosting Give the Gift of Art at the Art Central Foundation located at 4 North Main Street. Student artist pop-ups will have the perfect presents for the holidays. For more information, please check their Facebook at Merry Makers Market, Middletown, Ohio. Mr. Hot Dog and Juneberg's Wings will be reopening in the Pack. Please join in for their ribbon cutting on Tuesday, December 3rd at 1105 Central Avenue in downtown. And as Mr. Hoyne pointed out, the end of the year is approaching, and that means that several of our city boards and commission members' terms are coming to an end. If you have an interest in serving on a city board or commission for the city of Middletown and giving back to the city in this way, please do submit your application soon, as council will be discussing this in mid-December. To learn more, please visit the city's website at cityofmiddletown.org. Lastly, and as always, there are many ways to get involved with your community and give back. Join a board or committee, run for office, apply for a job with the city, volunteer at the hospital, pick up trash in your neighborhood or park, plant a garden in your yard, smile at a neighbor, find joy and satisfaction for a job well done in whatever work you do, or just have a positive and giving attitude. Find something that you can do regularly and give back. We are all connected, and we are all in this together. The care of our city is an adventure in which we all get to share. That is all for me tonight, and this concludes council comments. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is the city manager's reports. Acting City Manager, Mr. Nathan Cahal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As was alluded to in the Friday letter to you folks last week, our utility division sent out some mailers to many of our residents here in town, our water customers, in accordance with EPA requirements as it relates to lead water lines. So we are an order community in some of our parts of town, and we are subject to testing and sampling requirements by both federal and Ohio EPA. And one of those requirements is to send out notification letters to our customers within certain specified areas where by the age of the housing or the industrial or commercial construction, those types of materials were used at that point in time, or our sampling or testing has discovered it, or during construction projects or other maintenance work, we have discovered lead or copper lines. I've invited a representative from Black & Veatch that helps with our lead service program, along with our Public Works Director, Scott Tadish, to provide council and the community a little bit of an update on those letters, because unfortunately those EPA letters, there's a lot of things that we aren't allowed to wordsmith or change, and as a lay customer of ours, it can be somewhat alarming to say you see a letter that says lead, your water, and the like. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Tadish.
Good evening. Emily Tummins from Black & Veatch is here tonight to give us an update on this compliance program and what's happening with it, and then what comes next. And then we'll be certainly happy to answer any questions you have once she finishes up here. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, perfect. Yes, I'm Emily Tummins. I work with Black & Veatch, and I have the pleasure of helping the city of Middletown remain in compliance with the EPA's changing regulations. So today's PowerPoint presentation focuses on the project that has been completed. So the agenda is a quick background, so everybody is caught up to speed on some of the terminology, some of the timeline for the regulations, also the inventory development that occurred, what is complete, and then what is still to come for the city of Middletown. So the first question that was asked is, what is a service line? So that is the notification letters that were sent out. So a service line is the pipe that connects your water main under your road to the structure, the building, the property. The service line typically has two parts of ownership. The city of Middletown owns a portion of that service line, and the customer owns a portion of that service line. It extends all the way to the shutoff valve inside the customer's home. And water meters are located on this line, sometimes out in the yard and sometimes inside customers' homes. So again, that's kind of your background for service lines, and they can be made of lead, which is why the EPA is asking not just Middletown, but every water utility in the United States to identify these. I apologize for the headings. The presentation was made in widescreen. It got shrunk and some things got rearranged, but the next piece that was asked of the city was to identify the entire inventory of the distribution system. So trying to collect information, again, on ages of home, but also focusing in on what materials are there. Lead is a material of concern to customers who consume water that passes through it, and that's why we want to make sure if those lines are present, that those customers are notified, and there are mechanisms to remove those lines. So that's what the city completed. We looked at information on, again, both the public and the private side of that service line, and this creates the foundation for where potential lead service lines need to be replaced from to complete the requirement for the EPA. So the regulation, what does this look like? We had the lead and copper rule revisions that just had its compliance date on October 16th, so just about a month ago. The City of Middletown completed your initial service line inventory, so we got our green check there. We also met the November 15th date of sending out notification letters to any customer that could be served by a service line that could contain lead. So now the next thing up is the lead and copper rule improvements. That rule was just finalized by the EPA in October, and the compliance date will be November 1st of 2027. So this is what the City of Middletown is working towards over these next 3 years, is now we've identified where lead service lines are located. It's time to put together a prioritized list of how do we get those out of the ground, to, again, meet compliance with the rule where all lead service lines will have to be removed from the entire country by 2037. Again, other components like school and child care testing and new sampling plants are included. So the service line inventory, this is the step that we helped the city complete. So how did this work? It started with a records review. It went through field verification steps. We utilized predictive modeling, and then we met the compliance date again just a few weeks back. So if we're first looking at the records review, we looked at the entire City of Middletown's records from GIS, previous work orders, tax records, specifications for what pipes could be installed at what decades. In 1988 was when lead was banned in the state of Ohio. So every pipe installed after that date we know could be considered non-lead. But as with most cities in this part of the country, there are a lot of older structures. So there is the potential for lead. And then we identify data gaps. There are places where the EPA is asking for material information on the customer property pipe. The city never had to keep records of that. They don't own that pipe, but now the EPA says, we want you to find out what it is and tell us. So there's a big effort. That's not just the City of Middletown, that is every city across the country. So what did we look for? The EPA wants 4 different classifications of these pipes. Lead, that one's pretty simple. If the pipe is made of lead, that's how we classify it. Non-lead is if we can prove that it was installed after that lead ban date, or if we have records that show that it was copper, or it was iron, or it was something else. Galvanized requiring replacement is a tricky one to explain to customers. It's a galvanized pipe on their side, and it has the potential or is currently downstream of a lead pipe on the city side. So it could pose a risk. So the EPA wanted those quantified. And then unknowns. We just don't have records. So where those data points stood after the initial records review, there were some lead service lines, 42 were identified, but the majority fell in that unknown status. About over 17,000 were considered unknown. But so that's where we wanted to take the next step to identify what those unknowns were likely to be. The city did a great job of doing field verifications for this effort. There were efforts on the private side, so on the customer side, getting inside their homes, looking at meters, having a contractor write down or record what the material was. There were thousands of records that were input that way. And then the city had another effort that was looking at the pipe materials on the city side, so that involved vacuum excavation and looking in meter pits. So again, different ways to verify the materials. That information then was used by Black & Veatch to develop a predictive model for the city that was in compliance with what Ohio EPA as well as the EPA required. How that works at a very high level, we took the information from the city's data points. So if you think of a map, you have all these different colored dots based on if it's lead, if it's copper, if it's galvanized. Then we have a lot of orange dots on this map because those were all unknowns. We use predictive modeling based on all those field verifications to identify where we think there is lead or where we think there's non-lead. What is out there based on all the information that we've gathered so far, and then we can turn those unknowns into likely lead with variable probabilities for that prediction or likely non-lead. The accuracy increases every time we get more information. The city is constantly getting more data, and the models can be rerun with that information. And so we were able to take the output that looked like this that we showed a minute ago. We now have no more unknowns within the city of Middletown system. We now shared with Ohio EPA that we predict that there could be just over 4,000 lead service lines. And then the rest of those predictions that were previously unknowns are predicted to be non-lead. Again, over the next 3 years, we will move forward, or the city will move forward with identifying the best path forward. But those were the residents who were provided letters to say 42 were known, the rest were predicted based on all the information that was gathered. It does take a conservative approach because human health is at risk here, but it should be noted that the city of Middletown has great corrosion control treatment, historically very low lead levels, so even customers with lead service lines have been receiving a higher quality water. All right, and then the very last step was just meeting the compliance date. So the city of Middletown has a public-facing dashboard. It looks just like what's shown on the screen, where a customer can go type in their address, zooms into their house, it tells them the material that's predicted on the city side or what's known on the customer side. There's details, there's information on how they can reduce their risk, there's information on how they can contact the city if they think that there is an incorrect prediction or known material. Maybe they've paid to have their service line updated. So this is all live, so the city of Middletown met that compliance requirement. So what is complete? That service line inventory was submitted to Ohio EPA and it was approved. The inventory is publicly available because you classify as a large city, and those notification letters were sent. So all of those pieces are complete. Now we have 3 more years to plan for the next pieces that really involve that social, environmental equity piece. We know that there are some known lead service lines. There are a number of predicted service lines. We now need to get a path forward to replace those, but not just starting at the north of the city and working our way south, doing it in an equitable manner for all Middletown citizens. That compliance date is 3 years in the future. Again, school and child care sampling and changes in sampling protocols will be included in that requirement for the EPA. And just to finish up, there's a QR code for how you could reach that map that I was showing. So you could all go look up your address and see your service line material. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Really quickly first, if people don't do QR codes or they don't have access to this, is there a website people can go to?
Yes, it is on the City of Middletown's water website.
We're going to post an update to the website here, I think maybe even as early as tomorrow, to get this on the front-facing page. And just to clarify, residents haven't received the letter yet. They have been mailed. Expect them to get them here in the next couple days. So there's approximately 4,400 letters going out in those categories Emily spoke about. So they should get those here in the next couple of days.
Any questions from council or comments?
I'd like to see the map again.
Oops. I can't go
Go
back.
back. Oh, this
Oh.
is a small one.
There we
Yep,
go.
There we go.
And while she's looking at that, I have some questions. You have some questions, Mrs. Carter?
No,
You're just looking?
I'm just looking at this.
Would you mind speaking to your mic, please? Thank you.
So Scott, the process would be a homeowner or a resident can go on here. Like, for example, my house was built in 41, but I changed my service line out to PEX. So I think mine's showing here as predicted non-lead. What would I do to update that?
So there will be an email address and that I think you could contact the
Okay.
city and say, hey, I replaced my line, and we can confirm that. So Emily mentioned, so with that MTU replacement program, you may recall, where we go inside and do replace the automated meter readers, we've been tracking what they come across in the in houses as we go. So I think that's where we had the pretty good data from the private side.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll provide contact information, and there's contact information on the letter, both that email address I referred to, the website, and then a phone number for the water treatment plant if they have questions as well.
So do we have next steps for the 42 that definitely have lead?
That's what.
I mean, the plan will be to replace them.
Right.
Oh, sorry. The plan will be to replace them. The EPA has a number of requirements on how to provide pitcher filters and completing whole house flushing, the notification steps that are required, who can pay for it. So those pieces are being worked out now that Middletown has the information to know how many need to be required, how many potentially need to be required. There is funding available, and so that's what's being looked at.
Where's the funding?
The EPA has put out, at this point, I think it's $17.6 billion, spread across obviously the entire U.S., but Ohio has a large chunk of that because
I think it was 250 million I thought
For Ohio?
Ohio was going to get, which seems like a lot, but it's probably doesn't go as far as I think.
For people who have lead right now, is there something that we can do to help them between now and 2027?
yes, so the corrosion control treatment that's already being added to the water is keeping the lead levels low. If they want additional assistance, a pitcher filter is a method that can be used to further reduce their risk. On the website or the map that's being shown on the right-hand column, there's additional information. One of those speaks to the EPA's certified pitcher filters or point-of-use filters that customers can have in their homes. And some utilities are looking at providing those ahead of time. The EPA requires that you provide it after a service line replacement happens, but a number of utilities, now that they have completed their inventories and know this customer has a lead service line, are looking to be proactive.
And those pitcher filters, where can they be purchased?
Amazon, Home Depot, it's like a $30 Brita pitcher filter. Pure makes them as well. So.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the map and I see Main Street and I see Second. It seems like it's,
So this is just a snapshot. You can pan, like in the actual, on the website, you can pan around the whole city.
okay, what I was getting ready to say, I see Vale on the side. Vale is over here where those mini dots are, over there on that end.
Okay?
It says Vale, and then it's Second Avenue. So it seems like this isn't a correct map to me, looking at this map and knowing the streets.
Like the street names.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll confirm that. I think this is this a Google-based
Yeah, the
background, so we'll check on that.
And then, let me see if I have anything else that I'd like to ask right now. It sounds like we will still need to check all the unknowns. You mentioned that it'll be done equitably. Is that what you were saying? Because by 2037, all of these lead lines must be removed. Is that correct? So even though we have done the preliminary work to say what's likely lead, what's likely galvanized, we still must check all of them. Is that correct?
No, so you will have to check 95% of the predicted non-leads to verify that that is correct. So that'd be about 300 to 380 service lines that would have to be verified from that pool that were predicted non-lead. So you had over 13,000 non-lead predictions from that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from council at this time? No, hearing none. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that staff would like to say to that? Okay. Is there anything else for our city manager's reports?
Not tonight.
All right, well, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we will continue on to the consent agenda. While the consent agenda is generally for consensus items, do any council members wish to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening and move it to the motion agenda? Seeing none, we will continue. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Oh, I'm so sorry. Mrs. Skank, would you please read the consent agenda? Thank you.
For your consideration this evening, we have the approval of the City Council minutes of November 5th, 2024, to receive and file the following Board and Commission minutes: the Cemetery Board of July 24th, 2024, the Board of Zoning Appeals from August the 7th, September 4th, and October 2nd, 2024, and the Board of Health from October 8th, 2024, to receive and file oaths of office for Hope Colclasure and Mark Horn, and to receive and file the 2023 Tax Incentive Review Committee minutes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. West?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mayor Slamka?
Yes.
Mr. Lawley?
Yes.
Yeses have it, and the motion passes. The consent agenda is approved. The next agenda item is the motion agenda. We have 3 items this evening. Mrs. Skank, please present item A on the motion agenda.
To purchase calcium quicklime for the water treatment plant from Carmuse Lime and Stone Incorporated in the amount of $305.98 per ton for truck delivery.
Thank you. Mr. Cahal, the staff report, please.
Yes, before you, council, is a motion agenda item to award a bid for quicklime at our water treatment plant. This was a softening agent, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve item A to purchase calcium quicklime in the amount of $305.98 per ton?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mr. West?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mayor Slamka?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Lawley?
Yes.
Yeses have it, and the motion passes. Mrs. Skank, please present item B on the motion agenda.
To receive, file, and adopt the 2024 Tax Incentive Review Committee recommendations.
Thank you. Do I have, Mr. Cahal, the staff report, please.
Yes, before you, council, is the annual acceptance of the Tax Incentive Review Committee, or the TIRC, which is a statutory creature that reviews on an annual basis all of the property or all the tax abatements and or exemptions provided for the city on various economic development projects and developments here in the city. And this is kind of the annual ministerial acceptance of those recommendations.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve item B?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It having been properly moved and seconded, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mayor Slamka?
Yes.
Mr. Lawley?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. West?
Yes.
Yeses have it, and the motion passes. Mrs. Skank, please present item C on the motion agenda.
To accept a One Ohio Recovery Foundation grant in the amount of $76,330 to be used for the purchase of 2 vehicles for the Division of Police Outreach Team.
Thank you. Mr. Cahal, the staff report, please.
Yes, our Division of Police was fortunate enough to receive a One Ohio Recovery Foundation grant. The police chief and his command staff have identified a need to replace the side-by-side vehicle and add a pickup truck to the fleet for our outreach team, so they can better conduct their operations, especially the side-by-side. It's seen better days. It doesn't have any heat, and so it's in need of replacement.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve item C to accept the One Ohio Recovery Foundation grant for the use of 2 vehicles for the police outreach team?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Slanka,
Yes.
Mr. Lawley,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. West.
Yes.
The yeses have it, and the motion passes. This concludes the motion agenda. The next item on our agenda this evening is legislation. We have 19 items of legislation this evening. Law Director, Mr. Ben Yoder, the legislation, please.
Thank you, Mayor Slamka. First ordinance is ordinance number 0-2024-79, an ordinance directing a portion of the city's coronavirus local fiscal recovery fund payment to the provision of government services to the extent of the city's reduction in revenue resulting from the COVID-19 public health emergency by authorizing the Butler Tech Aviation Hangar project with funds to be encumbered March 3rd, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2024 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Yoder. Mr. Cahill, the staff report?
Yes, as was covered last time, this is the last provision of our contractual relationship under the land lease with Butler Tech for their aviation facility. This would provide them the $500,000 ARPA award that was contemplated under that agreement. The request is to pass this by emergency tonight so that we can properly encumber the funds before the end of the fiscal year and meet our federal requirements on the ARPA dollars.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mayor Slanka,
Yes.
Mr. Lawley,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. West,
Yes.
Mr. Horn.
Yes.
The yeses have it, and the legislation passes. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
Second item is ordinance number O-2024-80, an ordinance amending Chapter 232, which is Fire Division of the Codified Ordinances. This is a second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, do you have anything to add?
No, nothing from last meeting, but happy to answer any questions.
Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mr. Lawley,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. West,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Slanka.
Yes. The yeses have it, and the legislation passes. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
Third item is ordinance number O-2024-81, an ordinance establishing the pay ranges, pay policy, and benefits for various salaried and hourly classifications within the service of the city. This is a second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, do you have anything to add?
No, Your Honor, I do not.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance? So moved. Is there a second? Hearing no second to approve, we will table. How does that? Does it fall to the floor?
Correct.
Okay, so that will fall to the floor. And we shall continue with Mr. Yoder. Please read the next item.
Fourth item is ordinance number O-2024-82, an ordinance establishing pay ranges and certain benefits for employee classifications in the Middletown Department of Health and Environment. Again, a second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, do you have anything to add?
No, Your Honor.
Is there a motion to approve the ordinance? So moved. Is there a second? Having heard no second, this also will fall to the floor. And Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
Fifth item is resolution number R-2024-29, a resolution to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, State of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2025. This pertains to the annual budget for 2025 and is a second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, do you have anything to add?
No, Mayor, I do not.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Slanka,
Yes.
Mr. Lawley,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. West.
Yes.
The yeses have it, and the legislation passes. And Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
Sixth item is ordinance number O 2024-83, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a one-year extension of a lease of certain real property to Mark Kakaris, DBA, or doing business as Mark's Towing. A second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Cahal, do you have anything to add?
No, not since last meeting.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have one thing.
Mr. Horn?
So with Mark's Towing, they're okay with just going year to year, just because of potential of prices going up for fuels and such?
I know that Chief Nelson and his team have had more discussion with them, so I defer to.
I just want to make sure they're okay with it. Okay, I'm good.
All right, thank you, Mr. Horn. Is there any other discussion? Nope. Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mayor Slanka?
Yes.
Mr. Lawley?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. West?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
The yeses have it, and the legislation passes. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
Seventh item is ordinance number O 2024-85, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing an extension of a contract with Camira Water Solutions, Inc. for the purchase of ferric sulfate for use at the water reclamation facility. A second reading.
Thank you. Mr. Cahal, do you have anything to add?
No, Your Honor, I do not.
Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mr. Lawley?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. West?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mayor Slanka?
Yes. The yeses have it, and the legislation passes. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
Eighth item is resolution number R 2024-30, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Middletown, Counties of Butler and Warren, State of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2024, and declaring an emergency. This is year-end cleanup out of various funds.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cahal, do you have the staff report, please?
Yes, ma'am. Members of council, before you is legislation, as we typically have towards the end of every fiscal year, whereby we deappropriate and then reappropriate dollars within various funds to balance the books in compliance with auditor state requirements. In this case, we're predominantly dealing with, as we usually do, with the general fund. And we've talked about it, I think, also during some of our budget discussions, in that we had some unexpected overtime in public safety. That was a driver. It was unavoidable for the most part. And we also did not see revenue that was planned actually to hit during the 23 fiscal year, but we were expecting it definitely in 24. That would have supplemented some of the general fund costs that would normally be borne for some of our police operations to the tune of about $600,000. Those did not hit the bank account before the end of the year. And so what we're doing here in this legislation is we're taking a couple dollar bills from one pocket in the same pair of pants and moving it over to another. So we have unutilized appropriations in various departments, whether that's for office supplies or certain personnel costs or the like, and we are removing those under this legislation. We deappropriate and then move those dollars to various other line items in the same fund. So what's before you is moving around about $986,000 or so in the general fund. There are no new dollars appropriated. This is all within that fund's overall aggregate budget amount. It's just moving it between a few offices here and there. The other thing that you will see under this legislation is that we have a few TIF districts that are involved. That is a result of collections coming in higher than estimated, and the resulting expense, because we then have to, in some of these districts, reimburse the school district or pay other costs like the auditor's collection fee or whatnot, and those are based on a percentage of collections. Those expenses have exceeded. So in that case, we're looking at a increase in those expenditures, but that's actually a good thing because we've brought in that much more revenue. And with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. West,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Slanka,
Yes.
Mr. Lawley.
Yes.
Yeses have it, and the legislation passes. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
Ninth item is ordinance number O 2024-86, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to grant an access easement to Judith Elaine Tolson for a city-owned parcel located adjacent to 523 North Marshall Road and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Cahal, the staff report, please.
Yes, so back in the late 90s, the city widened this portion of Marshall Road and acquired additional right-of-way either through eminent domain or through negotiation with those property owners, additional space for the widening of the road, the new curb line, sidewalk, tree lawn, and the like. And those were acquired and recorded as separate parcels by fee simple deed. Typically, during our acquisition process, eventually those deeded parcels are converted to platted right-of-way, dedicated right-of-way. In this case, that was an oversight that did not occur. And we have a homeowner on this street that has a buyer, and the bank is saying, hey, legally speaking, technically speaking, you don't have access to a public right-of-way. We don't really want to, borrow against this house. So what is in front of you would be the city granting an easement across what is essentially their driveway to begin with, so that they have that clear access, and that allows us then time as a staff to come back in after the fact and dedicate that right-of-way as we should.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Is there any reason for us to even keep this and not give this thing to them, or?
There is, because the sidewalk runs across this parcel.
But it also looks like they've been driving across it this whole time anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's since at least 97, 98.
Just making.
Probably some adverse possession somewhere out there, but this cleans it up for the banks.
All right. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mr. West,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Slanka,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. Lawley.
Yes.
Yeses have it, and the legislation passes. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
10th item is ordinance number O 2024-87, an ordinance authorizing the third change order of a contract with Renaissance Inc. for demolition, of the site known as Middletown Paperboard and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Cahal, the staff report, please.
Yes, before you is a minorly, or at least what staff would say is a minorly sized change order for the paperboard demolition project. As you'll recall, the city holds a contract with Renaissance that has a not-to-exceed amount. We've encountered some field conditions that has required the removal of material or other activity beyond what was the estimated quantity. And so this change order of about $8,900 reflects that extra tonnage or cubic yards of debris or fill that was carted off of the site, so that we can continue to pursue our voluntary action plan on the site.
Thank you, Mr. Cahal. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Horn.
Since I'm from the construction world and I love change orders, is this it?
I hope so. I mean, I know I'll defer to Ashley on that one. She's been living that project a little bit more, but knock on wood, we haven't necessarily stumbled upon anything else.
Okay. I had a record. I had 150 change orders on one project, to the point where
We'll quit that filthy talk. We will not do that.
that the other clients or the other trades were calling and saying, how come you're getting paid and we're not? It's like, because I'm that good.
There you go.
But change orders are fine, but, I'm seeing flat land now, so I don't know how much more we need to change order.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we will continue and proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Slanka,
Yes.
Mr. Lawley,
Yes.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. West.
Yes.
The yeses have it, and the legislation passes. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
11th item is ordinance number O 2024-88, an ordinance amending the construction manager at risk agreement with Pepper Construction Company of Ohio LLC to accept change order number 4 for the City of Middletown Fire Services Headquarters in Satellite Stations project and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Cahall, the staff report, please.
I can attest, I can provide a brief overview, but Chief Snively's here tonight because he's been living and breathing, and I give him and his staff some credit, or not some, a lot of credit, for looking out for the city's interests and battling on some of these change orders behind the scenes, some of these for quite some time. Before you is change order number 4 that staff's asking for your concurrence with. It's related to both stations 82 and 80. God, I'm putting my glasses back on. 82 and 83. For some additional work that was identified that, although wasn't part of the original plans, was identified to be added to the scope of work to kind of do a quality job on some of these buildings and ensure they last 40 or 50 years on some coordination items. You'll also notice in the staff report that the fire chief and his team have also successfully deducted out of certain other provisions to bring this change order amount down to what it is. Where we're at, so the biggest question is where are we on the fire stations in terms of budget? We are still within the overall aggregate budget, and the chief can correct me here because I got a lot of things going on here in my head here number-wise, but over the last couple of weeks, but we have but as you'll remember, we had the construction costs. We had Pepper's, the GMP, the GC's kind of, general, conditions costs. And then we had a category called soft costs, which was just going to go towards anything extra. We have to do a little geotech, some of the interior fit out of the stations, like, buying new desks or beds or cabinetry and the like. That's where these additional dollars are coming in because thankfully we're finding that what was budgeted for some of those soft costs, it looks like between that and some of the contingency dollars, we're gonna slide into the home plate just fine.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Cahall. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Mrs. Kank, please call the roll.
Mayor Slamka?
Yes.
Mr. Lawley?
Yes.
Mrs. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. West?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
The yeses have it, and the legislation passes. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
12th item is ordinance number O 2024-89, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing the purchase of kitchen appliances for new fire stations 82 and 83 from Big Red Appliances and Mattresses and declaring an emergency. No actions requested until the December 3rd, 2024 council meeting.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cahall, the staff report, please.
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. Like we talked about some of those fit out and soft costs. Because I was told it was probably an unfair labor practice just tell everybody to pack their lunches. We have to equip the stations with some kitchen equipment and the like. So this would authorize the bids that have been collected by the fire department for the fit out for those appliances and other appurtenances for the 2 fire stations in question. You can imagine that we'll subsequently provide additional legislation along these lines for the next 2 when the time is right, sometime probably in the springtime of next year.
Thank you. As this is a second reading emergency, there is no action to take on this legislation item today. However, is there any discussion? Mr. Horn?
So on these Big Red Appliances, is this what the firemen want? They cook there, right? So we're getting them good appliances?
I think that's what they call it.
Okay.
So Chief Snively is nodding, yes, they do cook.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that, I'm sure there's some details and everything else, and it's like, I know we have budgets and such, but these are our first responders, so I'm not saying get a $10,000 Wolf stove in there, because I don't have one in my house, but I want you guys to have the best and something that's going to last, because you do live there. So I just want to just be clear that that's what we're buying, and not Wrecker and Burger scratch and dent. Okay.
All right. So yes.
You can go to 100 different restaurants in town and not get a meal like you get at the firehouse. Think about that.
Okay.
I've seen them as well. Like they're good at what they do. Also, I just wanted to thank Chief Snively for the detail that you provided in this staff report. I definitely appreciate that. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, we will continue. Mr. Yoder, please, next item.
13th item is ordinance number O-2024-90, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with Henderson Products, Inc. for the purchase and installation of upfit packages for 5 2024 Ford F600 trucks and declaring an emergency. No actions requested until the December 3rd, 2024 council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Yoder. Mr. Cahill, the staff report, please.
As council may remember, the city was authorized to buy these vehicles in question back in September. We have now taken delivery of those and can now coordinate the upfitting of those vehicles. And this legislation would authorize that expense. It's within the 2024 budget. And the request for emergency passage on a second reading is to allow us to encumber this year's budget dollars and not have this project bleed into 2025 since it's not budgeted for next year.
Thank you for that detail. As this is a second reading again, emergency, there is no action to take on this legislative item today. However, is there any discussion? Okay, I wanted to also say that I do appreciate the detail that was given in this staff report as well. It was very useful. Anything else? Any further discussion? No? Okay, hearing none, we will proceed. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
14th item is an ordinance number O-2024-91, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing an extension of the contract with CBM Managed Services, now known as Summit Food Services, for jail food service in 2025 and declaring an emergency. Again, no action requested until the December 3rd, 2024 council meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, the staff report, please.
Yes, before council is a contract approval for food service downstairs in the jail, or actually on this floor in the jail, I should say. This is a continuation with our current vendor. You'll see there is a slight increase in the per meal cost, and as we'll address in the next legislative item here, the police division has adjusted its estimate for number of meals in the year, which is reflected in that contract amount. This current year, there was an underestimate, which we'll get to next. So,
thank you. Again, as this is a second reading emergency, there is no action to take on this legislative item today. However, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will proceed. Mr. Yoder, next item, please.
15th item is ordinance number O-2024-92, an ordinance authorizing additional funds for the contract with, well, hold on, I think we have a duplicate on here. Right. Oh, no, it's not, excuse me on that. An ordinance authorizing additional funds for the contract with CBM Managed Services, now known as Summit Food Services, for jail food service in 2024 and declaring an emergency. Again, no action until the December 3rd meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, the staff report, please.
Yes, so council, this would authorize an increase in this 2024, the current contract with the vendor for food or jail food services by $30,000, which we believe will take us through the remainder of the year. We've had a double whammy on this one. First of all, the cost of the contract and for budget purposes was underestimated last year, and also our jail population has been a little bit higher than at times, which has driven that as well. So coupled with that, there's a request for an additional $30,000 to be added to the not to exceed amount. This still falls within 2024 police division budget parameters.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. Again, as this is a second reading emergency, there is no action to take on this legislative item today. However, is there any discussion?
Chief, you're arresting too many people. Kidding, Lauren. Just write that down.
All right. Well, thank you. Is there any further discussion or comment? No? Hearing none, we will proceed. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
16th item is ordinance number O-2024-93, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing additional funds for the 2024 contracts for ground maintenance and declaring an emergency. No action requested until the December 3rd, 2024 council meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, the staff report, please.
Much like the jail food contract, our mowing contracts are on a per mow basis in terms of pricing. This year, because of the weather and you know it's 60 degrees in the middle of November right now, we've had a few additional mowings than what was originally bid. We typically bid out 25 mowings a year on these contracts, and we have exceeded that, and so the request is to add to the not to exceed amounts pursuant to this legislation, all well within the 2024 budget.
Thank you very much. Again, there's no action required for this as this is a second reading emergency. However, is there any discussion at this point? Seeing none, we will proceed. Mr. Yoder, next item, please.
17th item is ordinance number O 2024-94, an ordinance authorizing the renewal of a contract with Anthem Dental for administration of the city's employee dental coverage and declaring an emergency. No action till the December 3rd, 2024 council meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, the staff report, please.
As occurs periodically, the city's dental insurance coverage has come up for renewal. Our TPA, NFP, solicited bids. They were reviewed with the Healthcare Committee, and the Healthcare Committee has recommended continuing with Anthem Dental for next year, as specified in the staff report. Just as you are looking at this, what's important is that the city provides free dental insurance on the base package, which, you know, includes some of your standard things, an annual x-ray, 2 cleanings a year, some basic services. And then our employees can then elect a buy-up plan where for a few extra dollars a pay or a month, whatever they buy up to, they get additional coverage for certain things, whether that be for crowns or fillings or the like. So what you're seeing here is information on both of those plans.
Thank you. As this is a second reading emergency, there is no action to take on this legislative item today. However, is there any discussion? I have one question on, if you look at Exhibit A, the effective date, I know this is for 1 year, but it does say January 1st, 25 through December 31st, 2026. Is that a typo?
No, this is a 2-year.
It is a 2-year?
2-year bid, yes. They, as the Healthcare Committee was vacillating over things, this was a 2-year lock from Anthem.
Okay, do we need to change the ordinance then? Because it says 1 year in the section 1.
Hold on, stand by. I'm trying to remember here. Let's stick with that 1 year. Let me get back with Human Resources. I was under the impression that it was a 2-year, and that's on me. Let me verify that, but we'll definitely verify that before the next meeting.
Certainly, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and is there any other discussion, any other questions? Hearing none, we will proceed. Mr. Yoder, the next item, please.
18th item is ordinance number O 2024-95, an ordinance authorizing the renewal of a contract with IMED for administration of the city's employee eye care coverage and declaring an emergency. No action requested till the December 3rd, 2024 council meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, the staff report, please.
Yes, just like with dental, we also provide vision insurance free on the basic plan. There's a buy-up plan for our employees. This would renew our vision coverage with IMED, who is our current vendor, and the Healthcare Committee and our employees have had little to no problems with that provider, and this would take us through 2028. It's at the, as you can see there, there is no price increase for that period of time.
Thank you. Again, this is a second reading emergency, so there's no action for tonight. However, is there any discussion at this time? Hearing none, we'll proceed. Mr. Yoder, the last item, please.
The 19th and very last item on our legislative agenda is resolution number R 2024-31. It's a resolution requesting the auditor of Butler County to advance to the treasurer of the city of Middletown, Ohio, taxes assessed and collected for and on behalf of the city of Middletown, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. No action requested until the December 3rd, 2024 council meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Cahill, the staff report.
Yes, so this legislative action would allow the city to exercise a statutory request as it relates to property tax collections, in that technically speaking, statutorily, the county auditor has until midway through the spring, I can't remember if it's late March, early April, to finalize the semi-annual tax settlement, which is monies collected from that past year, and then forwarded on to whether it's the city, the school district, the township, or whatever else. There is a mechanism under state law which this invokes. requesting that the county auditor relay to us ahead of that time a certain sizable portion of what is estimated to have already been collected, so that the city may utilize those funds and not have to wait until, the second quarter of next year to receive those dollars. This is a standard piece of legislation that we typically pass each and every year.
Thank you, Mr. Cahal. Again, as this is a second reading emergency, there is no action to take tonight. However, is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, this concludes the legislation for the evening. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Do any council members have anything they would like to bring up under unfinished business?
I have one thing.
Mr. Lally?
Want to remind everybody that the town mall surveys are out. I'll let Ashley tell you where they're all out, but and encourage people to take the survey and participate in it. I think you've gotten some back, maybe
We've received over 500 responses so far.
500. That's and I tell you, you did a great job on getting that out, Ashley, and people are talking about it all over town. It's amazing how people have. I mean, even in my family, they're like, I walk into my in-laws' house and they're all talking about it. And I know some people wanted to run right out, throw the RFP out, but I think it's important we let Middletonians, give some input, have a say in what possibly may go out there. I've heard some exciting things like a space launch pad, and sorry about that. That's my favorite one. We get Elon Musk here in Middletown, who knows? Awesome. But, and my thing about it is, who knows? Somebody might just have a brilliant idea, and that makes Middletown unique. So great job on getting those out. Others have helped get those things out, and Ashley, I don't know if you want to say what happens from here.
So tomorrow I'll be getting the yard signs, so you'll start seeing those popping up over the city. That'll be inviting residents to the town hall at Town Mall on Monday, December 16th. And then there'll be the survey sign where you can scan the QR code or learn where to get hard copies of the survey. Right now, we also have launched our project update site under the cityofmiddletown.org. Under residents, you can go down and it's Town Mall Redevelopment. So you can also find the survey there, project updates, understand what an RFP is, what's next when we close out the community input phase of this project.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any other unfinished business? I wanted to just ask, what is the next step, since those items had fallen to the floor for the PBO, for employees, and for health and environment? What's the next step for us there?
Legally speaking, in order to make any changes to the PBO, you're obviously going to have to find a way to get a first, a second, and a majority vote at council. So I would probably behoove myself, staff as well, and council members to get together and figure out what was unsupportable tonight and what would be supportable moving forward.
Shall we discuss that right now?
I don't know. I mean, are you suggesting we do that at the staff level or at a meeting?
Legally speaking, however it gets done, it doesn't matter. If council has
my
input.
recommendation is it's done at the staff level, but I think what has to happen is the city management and the healthcare committee and NFP, and I would like one member of the of city council to sit in having it on that meeting and come up with something that is amenable to all parties involved, so we can move forward on that. That healthcare committee was created by Middletown City Council, and it was done back in, Amy, you'd have to help me out with this, but it's like 2014, in that area where we were having problems with the healthcare fund being in the hole by a couple $1 million. And a lot of city employees made sacrifices to substantially increase their healthcare costs and create that healthcare fund that got the city out of $2 million in debt, and to this day being about $2 million to the good. So there's a lot of employees who had a lot of history in that, and they want to make sure that that healthcare fund is properly spent and utilized. My problem with it was there just seems to be too much discrepancy in the numbers. I'm having trouble following the numbers. I'm having problems with the information I get from NFP or the healthcare committee that I'm confused on how much of an increase there actually is in our healthcare for 2025. And if I read some of the stuff I've seen, if our costs are up $1 million for 2025, we are in trouble. But that's not what I'm seeing if I listen to NFP and the healthcare committee. So that's what we have to, that's why I think more attention has to be paid to what we're voting on. I'm not going to vote on something if I don't have all the information. And that was my problem with it.
Okay, thank you. And so the next step would be to have a meeting. I'm also just wondering, the healthcare committee put together in 2014, they looked at the PBO and they voted, correct? Is that correct?
No, don't hold me to that 2014 date.
Got you.
Somewhere in there.
Well, for this year though, when did they start looking at this for this year?
So discussions with the healthcare committee probably started in, late spring, early summer. NFP leads those discussions in terms of forecasting what they expect premium increases to be and claims to be and the like. And the healthcare committee, as it pertains to, so they look at two things. Well, let me say this: they're in charge. What they were put in the driver's seat on by council, probably about 20 years ago, was that the city would say, here are the budget dollars for the year that the city's going to contribute per employee, based on whether you're on single coverage, family, some mix, and the healthcare committee then works together with our TPA to design a plan or multiple health insurance plans that fit within that budget. And what the healthcare committee votes on is what would be the employee share of premiums, but also employee costs for co-pays or deductibles, any type of out-of-pocket. Because I can have a plan that has no co-pays, but the premium may be really high. Or we have a plan we have a particular plan where the premiums are fairly low, but you're going to pay $50 every time you go to the doctor, or $75 at Walgreens, or whatever. I'm just throwing some numbers out there, but yeah. So you kind of pick your poison. And so this year, the committee voted, of all the members present, unanimously to increase the employee share of premiums by 3.5%, because they were weighing that versus any type of plan design changes. So you could maybe, theoretically, you could look at it and say, hey, let's not increase premiums, but the copay on something's going to be more, the deductible goes up by a couple $100, or whatever the case might be. And it looked like we have, we as a self-funded entity, we have been running better than actuarially we would expect to be, which is a great problem to have. And so even though we were looking at an expected 5% increase, we were just inching in with 3.5%, with a worst case scenario, as you saw in the budget, a very worst case scenario, about an $800,000 spend down of the healthcare fund. Now, that's in two stripes. About 400,000 of that is, or about 350 to 400, however you want to flip it, not quite half, is looking at prescription drug costs. That is something that we have seen this year and parts of last year, where our medical spend for medical care has stayed relatively static, maybe a little bit up or down, but the prescription costs per month, just because of the mix of what our employees and their families are utilizing, has gone up a little faster. Now, it came down a little bit the last month, but we got to see if that's stable. So there's that component, and then we have not yet gotten our finalized quote for stop loss coverage, which is part of what the city pays for out of its employer share. What's in that budget is the worst case scenario. I truly hope that it's about $400,000 over, and that the spend down of the healthcare fund is very minimal.
Who is on, like, how many people are on the healthcare committee?
So there's
who are
around probably about 15 plus or minus. So the healthcare committee is made up of, there's representatives from all of our bargaining units. So that's fire, uniform patrol, police supervisors, records, dispatch, AFSCME. And then the city manager's office appoints some representatives from various non-collective bargaining offices or departments. And each one of those members has a weighted vote based on how many employees their work unit represents. So I think actually Mr. Turner there in the audience there, I think he actually holds the most votes of all the bargaining units or the work groups, as he's the fire representative for all fire personnel at the table, or unionized fire personnel, and they collectively vote on things. So as we do every year, the committee is presented with information and they decide any plan design changes. So in the recent past, there have been plan design changes whereby deductibles have been reduced or copays have been reduced or whatever the like might be because the fund was running well. Or there were premium holidays agreed to because of the fund and was doing well enough, and there was an employee premium where you didn't pay a premium for that month or that pay period or whatever. So, but that's
So for a point of clarification, NFP basically has said that the prescription costs are doing very well in 2024, and that the stop loss there's no problem with the stop loss. So if I heard you correctly, you're saying that you're predicting that there's going to be a $450,000 increase in prescription cost in 2025?
When this budget was put together, and when that was put together, Mr. Lawley, we were running hot on prescriptions. It has
What's
come
hot?
down the last couple.
What do you mean by hot?
So let's say prescription.
Give me a
drug-
number.
Let's say the prescription part of claims was, I don't know, 80,000 a month, and we're seeing it coming in at 120.
Over?
No, 120 versus 80,000 a month.
So is the prescription cost in 2024 pretty much where we thought it would be?
I haven't looked at it today, but I can get back with you.
And that's why it got
Yeah,
tabled.
and that's
why
fine.
it got tabled.
Yeah.
Because I'm having a hard time thinking we're going to be $450,000 over budget in our prescription costs. If we are, we got to figure something out. And 200 and however many thousand you said on the stop loss.
Yeah. There's
Because my understanding from NFP was that once the health committee, the employees agreed to take a 3.5% increase, the city was going to put in 3.5%, then we would be short $150,000. And that the committee agreed to, okay, we'll take $150,000 out of the 661 fund,
Yeah.
the healthcare reserve fund,
Yeah.
and we'd be fine.
Yeah. That's what's projected. Now, what's budgeted is a proposed over appropriation, just in case something doesn't go to plan.
But
Because the
pretty
fund doesn't pay claims that don't come in the door.
I get that.
Yeah, so if we don't get bills, we're good. We hope we don't.
So is that clear, or do we still need to have a meeting to look at this further?
I think we need to have a meeting to look at it further.
Because I guess what I would like to say is that if the healthcare committee met and unanimously voted for this, it seems like they were okay with it. They were, in fact, like talking to healthcare committee, like it looks like this was something that was seen as very fair. Their premiums were not going to be going up, I believe. Is that correct? They wouldn't have to pay more for prescriptions themselves. So what is an alternative that would like to be seen?
What the healthcare had no idea about was the $800,000 being taken out of the healthcare fund.
So is that correct?
That's what I was told by several healthcare committee members today.
Yeah, there's a difference what is appropriated, because we don't know what the stop loss is, and I don't want to come back and have to have an emergency
But we
meeting.
look at it over the last 10 years, so we
Yeah.
pretty much gauge that on what's occurred over the last 10 years and average that out. Once again, I don't see how it's going to be so catastrophic that, I mean, that's what I'm having. I just don't have enough information that I feel is accurate to make a decision tonight.
Oh, okay. So that said, tabling it, how does that affect healthcare for our employees? For example, if we bring this back on December 3rd, does that allow for time to get everything done before the end of the year for January 1?
So the PBO deals with, there's a section in the PBO that says that, it says that our non-union employees would be, could avail themselves of the same insurance coverage, that's provided, whatever's provided by the city. I think what we're really talking about is a budget number. And what I'm hearing is a feeling that there's an over-appropriation, a request for an over-appropriation, which I hope is incredibly correct. That was just to, if we have a bad year, to prevent having to come back for a supplemental appropriation, later on in 2025. Like we over budgeted in a lot of departments, as, we hope that something that we think, we may budget 150,000 for something, but we hope it comes in at $120. So the fund balance projection is just that, it's a projection. This fund is a internal service fund. It is a fund that no money can come out of that isn't spent on the health care claims of our employees. It can't go, unless it's repaying a loan from another fund, it's there for those purposes. And so, like we do in other funds, we show perhaps a slightly inflated appropriation level just to hedge. But at the end of the day, if stop loss comes in at the exact dollar amount it was for this last year, we're 400 of the good right there, because we're not going to spend it, because you can only spend it on stop loss out of that line item. The same way for our claims. We put together a projection based on advice from NFP, what we think our claims are going to be. And prescription is one of the things that is bounced around. And so staff thought it wise just to add a little bit of padding to the prescription amount, just because we have situations with our formulary coverage has fluctuated in terms of what's being covered in formulary and to what extent, on compounding, on 90-day deliveries. We're having issues at times, with certain pharmacies as to how they're handling that, how that's getting coded. We have certain other newer prescription medications that folks are using for I'll say off-label uses, under a doctor's supervision, of course, which has, fluctuated what those claim costs are. And so, there has been a little bit of ups and downs over the last 12 months. To your point, what we've witnessed is it seems to have kind of leveled back out, but we just don't know if that's a temporary function or, will continue. But I think I can't stress enough that it doesn't matter if there's $5 billion appropriated in that fund. If there's only, $1 million of bills, that's all that gets paid out of it. This was simply to pad the appropriation level so that we don't get into a situation if we have a catastrophic issue, God forbid, that we're paying out some major claims towards the end of the year and we have to rush here and have an emergency meeting to pay health insurance claims.
So how would tabling it today and making it possibly an emergency for the 3rd, how will that affect coverage or sign up for our employees?
So where we are in the process is that because of timing, because the health insurance is on a calendar year as well as our fiscal books are on a calendar year, and so we kind of get into a collision course this time of year. As is typical, we have open enrollment before the budget is finally adopted. It was adopted tonight. So in that case, I'm not sure anything has to change per se. If what we're talking about, I guess that's the question that I'm confused about with the tabling of the PBO, is that if the desire was to look at the appropriations level or whether or not to raise employee premiums or to change the employer contributions, that would have been handled in the budget. The PBO just simply says, hey, you're eligible as an employee for whatever insurance is available, per contracts, authorized by council every couple years. Just like we, had some readings tonight for dental and vision. So that's kind of the conundrum, is that if we are looking at whether we want to adjust premiums, that is probably something that we would not have to. I got to think this through now. I'm thinking about it. I mean, it's a question of, I want to be fair to all of our employees. And if an extra $4.50 a pay made them go between one plan or the other, I'd want to afford them the opportunity to change if they want to. However, assuming, folks come to consensus and it's December 4th the next day, that's an incredibly tight window to do that, and I think we'd have to consult with NFP and UMR on that one.
Will that be doable for us to, 'cause what I'm asking is, do we need to have a special meeting of council to look at this and vote on this before the 3rd to give us more time to do all of these things?
Well, from a staff standpoint, it would be good to know what port of call we're sailing towards, as to whether or not that would need to manifest itself into opening up or reopening open enrollment. If it's a deappropriation in Fund 661 down to something more modest, nothing else changes. That's just a supplemental appropriation you folks can do at your leisure at any point in time. If there is a desire to adjust the employer, the city contribution for premiums and health, Fund 661 costs, or the employees, that can be adjusted with a supplemental appropriation if and when you see fit, or that can also be administratively, let's say you wanted to reduce the increase in employee contribution. I mean, we're talking like across all funds about $20,000, maybe 25, but probably closer to 20 amongst all 382 covered individuals for next year. You're looking at, that could be administratively done. I don't know if we would have any employees that would be heartbroken if there was a payroll, not error, but a payroll adjustment in their favor. If there are other tweaks though beyond that, that may be something that we would definitely have to open re-enrollment on, or reopen open enrollment for.
So the meeting, how soon could we have the meeting?
So let me ask Ben this. So my point is, if we have this meeting and bring it back December 3rd, can it go as an emergency, and with the legislation that says it goes in if we get everything ironed out?
Yeah, legally
January
speaking,
1st?
absolutely. You can
So
pass
there you
stuff
go.
as an emergency.
That solves it right there.
You'll need 4. I think it's more the logistics
Right.
that staff is dealing with of, is there enough time to effectuate what changes might be requested prior to January 1st?
Yeah, I don't know that there'll be any plan changes. I don't see that. There's some other issues. per se, but I lost my train of thought here, sorry. Well, regardless, I think it's important we have that meeting, and I think the business can be taken care of December 3rd.
Well, that was my question, though. Would it be helpful to have a meeting to vote on it earlier for staff?
No,
Would
I
that
don't
give us
think
more
so.
time?
And that's 2 weeks, Mayor, and
don't
next week is a holiday week.
Right.
Understood. We could have it this year.
In my opinion, my concern isn't plan changes. I mean, the 3.5% increase this year? That was the first time in how many years?
7.
That's reality. If that makes me a prick, it's reality. Because the average resident in this town, my health insurance has probably doubled in the last 7 years. So 3.5%, I don't have an issue with. To me, that's not a big deal. My issue is, how are the numbers falling in the allocation? So I don't think we're talking about changing plans to where you would have to re-engage open enrollment. This is just, hey, what's the justification on allocating so much funding for this next year?
Question would be, in the HSA 13, where you're giving now 53 employees $1,600 or $3,300, where is that money paid out of?
It's going to be paid out of whatever fund those employees' personnel costs are.
So the general fund.
Or the water fund.
Or the water
sewer
fund or something like
or the
that.
court fund.
And most of those employees who get in that are young employees. And did not NFP,
I don't know that.
NFP basically has said that if you get 50 employees in that program, even that $150,000 should probably be a wash. That's information I got from NFP.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't aware you were chatting with.
So that's my problem with this whole
peculiar.
thing, is council should have been given all this information at least a month ago. We probably have too many plans. We've always said that. We have too many plans, but it's very difficult and cumbersome to navigate through all the collective bargaining groups and what have you. It'd be nice just to take everybody to the plans that are on that the police and fire are on, but that's extremely expensive. I get that. However, I think we need to start a lot earlier next year.
Actually, it's very doable.
Well, then why didn't we do it?
The committee has discussed it and is looking at, and I think that's something they're working on for 25, is to consider
That's a good thing.
some
then.
plan design. I think where you land, if we're going to be intellectually honest, is you probably look at a high deductible plan option like we have, and probably a PPO that mirrors 12, but may have slightly higher deductible or a little slightly higher premium, but provides those plan benefits. I mean, if you went to one plan.
Just food for thought for the future.
Oh, yeah.
For 2025, this
Yeah.
discussion probably needs to start in July or August.
Understood, yeah. And so you had mentioned also a council member to be part of that meeting, so it would have to take place fairly soon. Do you want to discuss that offline with staff to get that done as soon as possible?
Sure.
Okay. Any other discussion on that or any other unfinished business? All right. Then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is new business. Do any council members have any new business this evening? Yes, Mr. Horn.
I'd like to request Amy, Clerk of Council, formally to have a happy birthday. And thank you for all you do and for being here on your birthday. That's my new business.
Happy birthday.
Best birthday party ever, right, Amy?
Oh, yeah.
Happy birthday, Amy.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Is there any other new business for this evening? Hearing none, then we will continue. And let me get this out. The next item on the agenda is executive session. And do I hear a motion to move to executive session under the authority of ORC 121.22G1, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, and under the authority of ORC 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or for the sale of property at competitive bidding if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage, and under the authority of ORC 121.22G8, to consider confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance, or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance, provided that both of the following conditions apply. 1, the information is directly related to a request for economic development assistance that is to be provided or administered under any provision of Chapter 715, 725, 1724, or 1728, or Sections 701.07, 3735.67 to 3735.70, 5709.40 to 5709.43, 5709.61 to 5709.69, 5709.73 to 5709.75, or 5709.77 to 5709.81 of the revised code, or that involves public infrastructure improvements or the extension of facility services that are directly related to an economic development project. 2, a unanimous quorum of the public body determines by a roll call vote that the executive session is necessary to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment of or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project.
Motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly first and seconded, and we will now proceed to vote. Mrs. Skank, please call the roll.
Mrs. Carter,
Yes.
Mr. West,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Ms. Slamka,
Yes.
Mr. Lawley.
Yes.
Thank you. The yeses have it. We will now move to executive session, and we'll return to open session to adjourn.